Hello, everyone. Welcome to this live webinar, video Q&A in the series that we are calling it Braving Crisis with Tech and InsurTech. Today, we have with us Yashish Dahiya, who is the co-founder and group CEO of Policybazaar. I was just reading up on the site, and I was fascinated by some of the statistics that have been mentioned about Policybazaar. So I thought it might be useful for the audience to know. It says that there are over 100 million visitors a year to the Policybazaar website. There are about 400,000 insurance policies sold every month. About 1/4 of the India's life cover, which is about 25% of India's life cover, is covered by Policybazaar. So those are some amazing statistics to just understand, the size of the operations. This particular series, Ashish, we have been trying to cover a few things. One is that both IMAI and Medici, who are organizers of this, we have been getting a lot of requests from young founders, entrepreneurs, as well as industry personnel that how are the leaders in the industry coping up with the crisis? What are the organizations doing? How are they kind of managing their employees and work? And then also, since we're here, we are also trying to cover some of the insurance topics and how insurtech sector you see developing in this country. So I'll sort of cover questions ranging from both these topics. So maybe
Sure.
without further ado, I will just kind of jump into the questions. Once again, thanks everyone, and thanks for IMAI to sort of co-organize this along with Medici. There are about 60 people here right now who have joined, and then this is being live streamed on YouTube as well. So there'll be a bunch of more people over there as well. So Yashish, my first question to you is that we all know that these are very sort of challenging and very uncertain times. We are hearing from founders, entrepreneurs, people in the industry that there's anxiety, there is fear, there is panic, there is a lot of emotions which are going on, and we want to understand from you that how are you coping up with all this as an organization, and how is the business doing?
So we had 17 business lines. I represent both Policybazaar and Paisabazaar, not just Policybazaar, because I'm sort of the group CEO. So we had 17 business lines across these. Of these 17 business lines, the variance is from plus 50% above plan to minus 100% below plan, right? So there's a lot of variance. And of course, we are very lucky to have 17 business units, because we can see all of them, and we can see growth in some, and we can see decline in some. I think our situation and my confidence would be very different if I saw decline across the board, right? And I think some of the solutions which we were able to work on a pretty steady manner. So now coming back to the different business lines and how we are thinking about them, where we see we first of all decided, because we were in a good situation, that we're not making any short-term decisions. Short-term, of course we are. So everybody's gone to work from home. We have 13,000 employees in these 17 business units, all working from home. And you can imagine from day one, it has been a flawless execution in the sense that people have really stepped up. These are young people working from home. They are almost the age of my kids, if you think about it. My son is 18, right? Many of these are employees at 22 years old, just 4 years older. I can imagine what could be on their mind. They could be watching movies in the day. But these people have continued to be there and service the customers, which is a very positive thing. I think we've so far taken a view that we are redeploying resources amongst these business units, and we are using this as an opportunity where there's an opportunity to increase our market share. So, for example, in health and life insurance, if you notice, we have really upped our marketing spend. So we are now, I think, the second largest marketing spender in the country, which is certainly much more than our size, right? Our size is not that big. And the reason we've done that is because it's an opportunity for us to take our market share from maybe just sort of 10% to maybe 25%. My hope is that we come out of this crisis with more than 25% market share of health insurance. And we're pushing the gas on that. Whereas on certain lines, we're taking a far more cautious approach and we're saying, look, survival is most important. Let's not be in a massive hurry to get things sort of, so I think it's a portfolio approach. It's not a panic-driven approach.
Right. How is the overall insurance market in terms of the demand? Both from
It's
as well
yeah.
as
So see, anything that required, if you want to buy genuine insurance, like you want to get a few crores of insurance cover, or you want to get 10 lakh rupee medical insurance or something of that sort, you usually need to go through a physical medical test. Especially if you are older or there's a pre-existing disease, there is clearly so I think wherever there was a physical process, and if you're taking a credit card, there was an offline meeting that had to happen for document collection. So wherever there was a physical leg in any process, those processes have come to a full standstill. And we are hoping in some time they'll open. But I see that as a short-term thing. I don't see that as a long-term thing, right? Because I think we can't be in lockdown forever. If it lasts 2-3 months, that's fine. Wherever those were there, we have attempted to move as much of it digital as possible. And wherever there wasn't a physical leg, business is fine. So demand for credit cards and loans is also high. Demand for health insurance is also high. Demand for everything is high. But can you and even in motor insurance, there is no fall in demand. But can you fulfill without inspection? I think that's where the key is, and our attempt has been to move as much of the fulfillment online, including claims fulfillment, etc., etc. So I suspect the industry will come out of this far more stronger with digital processes. Now, when you talk about the overall industry, see, we are a fraction of the industry. The overall industry is largely offline. Today, you are not going to go to a bank. If you think about how many people are walking into a bank today, it's very few, and banks are a very large channel for distributing insurance. I don't know the exact number, but I think at least a third of insurance is sold by banks. You go to a bank person says, instead of FD, why don't you buy this insurance product, right? Or whatever. Yeah. Agents, it is a struggle, right? You're not going to let an insurance agent come into your house and have a cup of coffee like you used to earlier, right? Offices are not there, so the agent cannot go and sit in an office canteen and wait for people to come in, right? I think lots of physical parts of the industry will have different. But my point is, there was a trend. If I look at insurance industry, there was a long-term trend towards protection products, a long-term trend towards online. Both of those will play out a little faster in this situation than they would have in the normal course of events.
Yeah. I also wanted to ask you a little bit of an organizational question that once the work from home started, right in the beginning, were there any challenges that you faced? And then now that, after a few weeks, are there things that you have kind of, you have understood about this arrangement and how this can be done in the best way possible? Anything you can share that the audience can learn from?
So we are learning all the time, but see, one of the things that I am particularly very lucky with is there is a very deep team. It's not a small, shallow team. It's a very deep team. What do I mean by a deep team? There's about 200 people who are extremely committed to cause and who act in a founder-like manner in the company, right? And it's such an arrogant statement to make, but the execution was flawless. At between 10 to 11 on the day work from home was implemented, we had exactly the same number of sales as we had between 10 to 11 the previous day, or maybe more, not less. All the people were working. The call volume was actually higher. The call take rates was actually higher. The conversion rates were higher. The connectivities were higher. The number of minutes spent on talk time were higher. Uh, Everything held up. Everything held up. And what I want to say is that doesn't happen by chance. That clearly doesn't happen by chance. So there were this dedicated bunch of 200 odd people who were working day and night for the 10 days before that to make sure this happened. Whether it was technology, whether it was operations, whether it was people forming alternate communication groups to make sure that the same communications that they had in office, the same command and control structure that existed in office, continued to function very efficiently. Now, that said, of course, once work from home happened, we saw there were certain gaps. Like, for example, when a person does a sale, it often gets celebrated. The individual would only hear from his boss, but the celebration would be missing. Now, of course, we have mechanisms that there is actually a celebration. People say, hey, so did a sale, and, claps come in, and, people can say, woohoo, or whatever. And all of that sound, surround sound actually comes to the person. So those are the smaller things that we continue to do. I think our training has become more efficient because earlier you had the physical, so you could meet people and train them. But now we are training remotely. So I think that has become better. But then again, we've got a learning and development department, which, my own communications, I think I used to communicate a lot less than I do today. So I think on everything, the important part was nobody had to be told. They just did it. And I think I worked in organizations before. I have never seen it. I have never seen it. It's just a magical organization. I must just, share that with you very honestly.
That's really good to hear. You must be very proud of the team as I can see here. Can you also share what's happening at the industry level in terms of how would you characterize what's happening in the industry? Say, for example, in terms of, are there too many claims happening? Are there any other issues?
No. So see, remember, what do we sell as an industry? We sell mostly motor insurance and we sell investment products as an industry. Right? And if you actually notice, cars are not driving. So actually claims have gone down, dramatically so. Accidents have gone down. I think there is no particular observed change in the death rate in the country. Because at the end of it, we have lost, it's a very sad thing, but we've lost people. In India, 30,000 people die every day. We've lost 300 or something people over the last 1 month. And 30,000 people die every day. So it cannot potentially cause a remarkable shift in the death rate in the country. Even if you look at hospitalization, I think people for regular hospitalization would be more keen to go to a hospital earlier than they are today. So if somebody, I can just give you an example. I think if 1 year ago my father had a bit of a fever, or he wasn't feeling well, or he had a cough, he would go to the hospital and get it checked. Today he won't. He'll just say, why bother? I'll be at home and that's fine. So there is no perceptive growth in claims ratios of any sort. Yes, I have seen 8 to 10. I have seen 8 to 10 COVID related health insurance claims come in. They are expensive. My initial thought process was COVID cannot be expensive because it's just a couple of days of hospitalization, you're back home. But the claims that have come in are more than 4 lakh rupees each. So these are significant for one specific disease. So clearly, treatment is not as cheap as we thought it was. It's probably at this point it's costing quite a bit.
Right. Actually, just so that the video is still choppy. There is a little bit of disturbance in between. So I don't know if you can do something about it.
I just tried what I could, but that's all I have.
Okay. Okay, let's go ahead. So one of the things that we are hearing from a few founders, entrepreneurs is that in crises like these, this is also the time for some new opportunities, right? So there are people who are thinking about new products and new services. Is there something that has come to your observation in terms of any new opportunity that you hadn't seen before?
Oh, yes, totally. We are looking at remote fulfillment very, very seriously. Like we are working day and night on making sure remote fulfillment can become as large a percentage of our business as possible. Not remote booking, because that was already the case, but remote fulfillment, examinations, inspections, liveness tests, etc., 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 claims fulfillment. My view is all of that has to somewhere become remote, because if it does not, uh, then there are physical legs in the business, and the moment there are physical legs, those don't work in a crisis like this, right? Nobody ever imagined there wouldn't be a physical leg. And when I look at the industry, a lot of the industry was offline. That part would obviously struggle.
Right, right. So let me ask you a few very insurtech related questions, and I'll bring in a little bit of a global view as well. We track the global insurtech industry, and what do you think about licensed insurtech players like Zongan, Lemonade, even in India like Echo? And why did you not take that route, of sort of getting an insurance license and creating and manufacturing products?
We are a marketplace. We work with 50 odd insurance companies. We have a lot of data, which we share in an open architecture format with all our partners, and try to see if they can create better and better products and smarter products. With 50 partners out there, we have never felt the need of one more partner. Because if we set up, we would be essentially one more partner for ourselves, right? We are able to get enough cooperation, enough agility from our partners that we do not feel the need. Genuinely, we have thought about it very often. We do not feel that need. The second part is, I think if any of our partners who have, it would not be fair to them.
Right.
So I think marketplace we will not cover.
Right, right. And it was very interesting. You talked about fulfillment and that you're trying to move a lot of things like claims and all that digital. I also remember that there was news about your health tech venture, Doc Prime, and then I think a B2B venture which was Zfin. So how should one look at Policy Bazaar? It's much more than an aggregator. And how would you kind of describe what's happening in those individual ventures as well?
See, when you develop your technology for yourself, let me start by a very simple example. Suppose I make food for myself. I want to just eat it. It doesn't have to be very presentable. You see what I mean? It has the nutrition, but it's not very presentable.
Yeah.
And if you were to eat the food I make, but if I'm running a restaurant and I need to present food, I need to present it in a certain way to you so that you like it. It's the same with technology. When we make our own technology, we make it for that specific use. And it doesn't have to look good. It has to do good, right? I think when you make it for the external world, you have to do good and look good. And that is exactly where Zfin comes in. So Zfin modularizes the technologies that Policy Bazaar has. Policy Bazaar has a lot of technology and offers it to other insurance players in India and outside. And that's gaining traction. We have, I think, 13 clients, and Zfin continues to do business. Right? On Doc Prime, honestly, unfortunately, we could not get very good alignment internally. So we have for now decided to, take the pedal off the gas and come back with with Doc Prime in some more time with better understanding of what we want to do. But on whatever operations we were doing, we continue to support the customers to whom there would be commitments. But other than that, there's no new acquisition happening on Doc Prime.
Okay. Now, it won't be fair if I just keep asking questions and I don't, see some of the audience questions out there. So there is a gentleman, Ranjit Bedi, who is saying, Yashish, our insurance sector seems more product-centric than customer-centric. Example, insurers overseas for motor insurance are extending policies for period of lockdown. Don't see much of a lead either on customer communication in times of crisis or such gestures in India. Your thoughts?
See, it's a regulated sector. I think given the opportunity, many insurers would step up and offer such facilities to customers. But it's a regulated area, and I do not want to get into what the process would be of taking an approval to pass on certain benefits to insurers. It's also a complex sector. Remember, in insurance, we are not allowed to give discounts. We're not allowed to give cashbacks. We're not allowed to do, and that's for a reason. Now, if that starts to happen, that part of the industry would be gone. So the industry has to decide whether to do that or not do that. So, for example, if I'm a pair of jeans, I can just say, okay, free today. That cannot happen. It is not permitted by law. I cannot say, if an insurance policy is worth 1,258 rupees, I cannot say, okay, 10 rupees off today. The moment I do that, it's a rebate. And rebate is illegal in the insurance industry. And that is the reason insurance companies cannot do something of that sort. Suppose insurance companies came in and said, I want to give you 2 months payment holiday. No, you cannot, because that's regulated. And the third party element to it. So I don't think it's about consumer centricity, if you would ask me. I think I'm aware a few insurers have even gone and made the request. I'm aware of that. And I'm sure if permitted, many would. As long as it's not being used as a short-term customer acquisition tool only. Please understand, rebating is usually used as a short-term customer acquisition tool.
Right. So that answers the question. Akriti Jain is asking, what are your views on the post-COVID-19 work era? So this is a work organization related question. As the workforce would be more robust to operate from home, would that become a norm?
So I could just share with you, we have given notices to close down offices for about 5,000 people. But we're not laying off anyone. So what does that tell you? 5,000 people at least will always work from home.
Right. At
least. So I clearly see if work from home works, which it clearly has proven it does, it would. So we wanted to open an office in Chennai, for example. I am quite certain we're not going to open an office in Chennai. We're just going to expand our work from home and hire some Tamil speaking people, whether they are based in Chennai or whether they're based in New York, I don't care.
Yeah.
Right. So I think that will change. But more importantly, I think social distancing is here to stay. For the first time, Indians have been truly pushed on this concept of social distancing. And I think that will not just disappear as quickly as the lockdown disappears.
Right.
So, yeah, one will have to see how that plays out.
Now, a very interesting question is coming, Salil Ravindran. Hi, Ashish. From a product perspective, should insurers treat this as a one-off event, or will they be forced to work on newer models accounting for such eventualities? And he asks a very interesting sub-question there. Will the prices go up?
Okay, so it will depend on price for what, but I'll try to answer that. I think it's a one-off event. It's not a forever event. But there are certain changes this event brings about. Like I don't expect another COVID-20 next year and another COVID-21 the year after. Like I just don't expect it. It might happen, but I don't expect it. I think the chances of such an event happening are just the same as they were earlier. Let us say they were in any 1 year, they were about 1 in 40. 2020 happened to be the unlucky year and 1 in 40 happened. So once in a 40-year event, it happened. that I all know, whoever's done mathematics, that if a dice comes heads last time, it doesn't mean it's going to come heads again. But there's still a 50% chance. So there's a according to me, there's a 2.5% again in 2021 and 2022. But the world has a short-term memory, so yes, there will be a little more thought around, work from home can happen, and let's push in that direction, etc. Now, as far as insurance is concerned, I have a view, but I can't speak on it, and I'm honestly saying that I can't speak on it for again regulatory reasons, because price is not something I'm authorized to speak on. So I'll just leave it there. I'm careful about that.
Sure. Here's a question from Sandeep Jhakar. Is awareness of health products has increased given current pandemic scenario, and offtake of digital health products would rise in the coming days?
I certainly think so. We are seeing about 40 to 50% higher traffic for health insurance. Clearly, but people need to be careful what they buy, because you could end up buying a lemon product also. So one just needs to be still careful about what you are buying. I think there are some insurance policies out there for everyone. One just needs to be careful. That's all. Don't treat it as an impulse purchase that I want to just buy one today and so this is it, right? I think clearly digital is here to stay and grow. There's no doubt about that.
Right. There's a question from an anonymous attendee. What's the reason that no insurtech business model except web aggregation has worked in India? And do you see that changing? Before you go there, before you answer, Ashish, from our perspective, I can just mention that there are about 1,400 insurtech companies globally that we track, and about 135, 140 are in India. So it's not that in India web aggregation is the only model. There are a bunch of insurtech startups which are doing very interesting work. But what do you say, Ashish?
No, there's lots of people doing lots of very interesting work. I, as Yashish Dahiya, might have started a insurtech startup also. And I have started a web aggregator. And for me, my job currently is to make this successful. And so I'm doing that. See, insurance, but then just stepping back, insurance on a global scale is poorly understood, according to me. And the reason for that is many people who come from the tech world believe it is very, very akin to e-commerce, and believe. So let me explain. An agent does not even spend 5% of his time on actual fulfillment or processes, but he spends more than 95% of his time on customer scouting. So the only thing that's important in insurance is customer. Can you get a customer? If you don't have a customer, you can twiddle thumbs with the best possible tool also. Right? And that, I think, is something that is not very well understood in the insurtech world. I see a lot of people get very excited that, okay, I've got this little tool and now it'll work because it is such a good thing. But customers do not come. And then you're sitting at the end of 6 months with 4 customers, right? Or with no revenue. So there are millions and millions of people who sell insurance in the world. So all I'm trying to say is you have to think, how will you get the customer? If you have a way to get the customer, you could potentially have a business. I think the web aggregator model clearly answers that very well, that the customers need information. I will provide that information. The customers to seek that information, and hence I will have customers. Once you have customers, the other things are a lot easier. So in insurance, tech is not the hard part. Getting the customer is the hard part. Right. Once I have the data, and as you think about it, right? People talk about big data, but big data is all about who has the customers. Today, Google has the maximum amount of data because there are maximum number of whatever, Google or Facebook. But the reason they have it is not just because they're the best scientists. There must be a lot of scientists sitting outside without data who can't get the same data. And without that data, you can do jack with AI or smart computing or whatever, because you don't have the data, you know nothing, right? So I think that part people should just keep in mind. That's all.
Right. So we have about 10 minutes. I'll take probably two more questions from this, and then I'll go back to my own questions, which I need to finish. So there's a question from Manoj Pandey. Has the entry of Paytm, Flipkart, etc. in insurance distribution affected the business? If yes, in which segment?
I definitely think they have very large platforms from which insurance should be bought. Why not? And I think that should help insurance grow further. Please understand, insurance is a highly underpenetrated market. Highly underpenetrated. So a very small fraction of people in this country have health insurance or life insurance. And when I say health insurance or life insurance, is real health insurance or life insurance, not, some very small product. And I think the more players that propagate it, the better it is, without a shadow of doubt.
Right. Let me actually go back to the questions. Okay. So let me just take one more. This question from Parvez Hussain. What is the biggest challenge of why people shy away from taking health insurance?
You got to spend money. Why do you want to spend money? There's no instant gratification. If insurance is bought with instant gratification in mind, the companies will go bust. So please understand, if I stand outside the hospital and every person walking into the hospital, I say, buy health insurance before you get into the hospital. Imagine, right? And it covers you from day one. The companies would go bust, right? Because you would just pay 200 rupees or get 20,000 rupees or 50,000 rupees or 5 lakhs or whatever it is, right? On the other, so basically it's a product where you don't believe. Companies only want those people who do not believe they're going to be in hospital tomorrow. They will go to hospital, like you asked me, right? What about COVID-19? I think there's a 2.5% chance an event like this could also happen in 2021. That's what your state must be when you buy health insurance. If you have prior knowledge of an event, you can't buy health insurance for that. And people have to prevent you. People like us our job is to prevent you from buying rather than help you buying, right? And so there is no instant gratification. And because there is no instant gratification, people say, why should I spend the money? I will not get a mango. I will not get a pair of jeans. I will not get a pair of shoes. I will not get a flight. It will not be a great experience. So now, but I'll also tell you the other side. I have seen people, and I must say this, I have seen people crying in temples or mosques or whatever that place of worship they might have, that why did they not take insurance when they could? I have seen it. I have seen it, personal examples. I have seen family. I have seen friends. Because when it comes, it hits so bad. And I'm not, here to propagate fear, clearly, right? We're talking to a fairly smart bunch of people. So I think it's one of those necessities that people just don't want to take because they think it'll never happen. It's too late.
There is a question from Sagar Agarwal. It's interesting to note that for years, claims plus expenses is always greater than premiums earned. And therefore, insurance companies have annual operating losses and therefore have to depend on investment earnings to generate profits. Why is pricing or underwriting not improving in India?
I think it is. I think it will be. Is my short answer. Again, I'm not regulatorily competent to answer this with any more detail on a public forum.
Sure, no problem. Now, I'm going back to my own questions. This is about growth. So now, given that situation has changed quite a bit, I'm talking about in the short term right now. In the next few months, do you see, in terms of customer acquisition, the source of growth for you? Has that changed? Is it going to change? Are you going to spend on certain channels more than the other? Does it look very different from, say, last year?
Yes, our spends will increase. We are going more mass. We are certainly going more mass. We are going towards lower denomination policies as well. We know India is a vast country. We have to go deep and mass. I think not just our spends, but also our products, our processes will change in that. We see an opportunity currently to grow, and we will do whatever we can to do that.
Right. Now, we have asked this question to many founders about what's
Like
the
for example, you see us now. You see us on DD quite a bit. For the people who notice, we are a lot on Doordarshan now. We were not on Doordarshan earlier. So that's just a clear example of what we are doing, right?
In fact, yesterday night I was telling my family that I'm going to interview CEO of Policy Bazaar, and my mother comes to me in the morning and says that I saw the ad of that company that you talked about on Ramayan while the Ramayan was playing. So yeah.
So we are certainly
Right. Now, in terms of so in many countries, including in India, the government regulators are doing bunch of things for the industry. Is there any specific help or support that you have seen coming from the government or the regulator for players like you?
There is understanding, there is engagement, there is encouragement. I think the rules can be simpler. I don't want anybody's feelings in this, but I think the rules are quite tight. It's a very, very narrow path that someone like us has to walk on. Yeah, that's a normal feeling, right? That the rules can be simpler. I think many things don't help the customer that we have as rules today.
Right. I wanted to also know any programs, any initiatives that you have taken to sort of help people, help the country, help the ecosystem. I'm sure there are some things that Policy Bazaar as a company is doing. Could you just mention any initiatives or things that you have done for the society?
Sure. So the government, the National Health Authority, a COVID helpline. For the COVID cases, you have to call them, you have to track them, you have to speak to them, you have to give them information. People can have questions; those questions have to be answered. So there's a COVID helpline that runs. We run a significant part of that. So we have about 1,000 people deployed full time on the COVID helpline. We are doing this on a pro bono basis. If you do a very rough calculation, that is roughly 12 lakh rupees of cost every day that we are taking on. So within a month, that will be almost 5 crore rupees that we as Policy Bazaar are taking on, as e-tech cases are taking on. And we are very, very proud to do that, to be of any help. The second thing we have done is we have built a lot of modules for digital fulfillment. And we know at this stage, the industry is struggling with digital fulfillment. We have offered these on a short-term, long-term basis to the entire industry for free. We do not want to be paid. And I genuinely don't have any agenda on this. And if you notice, so far, we've not even publicly spoken. You asked me this question, so I answered it. So far, publicly, we've never spoken on it. We've done no PR on this, nothing. Right, on both of these initiatives. I think third, we have excess manpower right now, but we have guaranteed everybody's salary till 30th of June. That's not you would say, okay, that's not a that's not a regulatedly required thing. In the sense, 30th of June is quite far away. And we did this on the first day itself. So we announced there'll be no salary cuts. There'll be no nothing till 30th of June, right? I think we are a private organization. At the end of it, that costs us money. We are doing that. I know that our organization is doing something which I can't speak about right now, but both organization and individuals are doing something. I can't speak about right now is because it's still happening. So yeah, we are doing our bit here. We're doing what we can. And we are here. If somebody can ask what more we can do, we are here to do our bit. That's it.
Sure. There's an interesting question here by Ranjit Bedi, which was sort of my question as well, that don't see many preventive healthcare insurance models in India and only event based. It's better management of risk from an insurer and better health from a customer perspective. Your thoughts on that?
No, I think it's a very valid point. It's an extremely valid point. And I think there are, of course, difficulties in implementing, serious difficulties in implementing the model. So one is paying lip service to it. Second is actually doing it the way, it ought to be done. You can't run preventive health insurance, healthcare just for insurance. The purpose has to be preventive healthcare. We've seen a few examples where the purpose is just insurance and somehow, you're calling it preventive health. I think, so haven't seen a very solid attempt. I'm sure, if, for example, hasn't been there, maybe web aggregation may not have been such a popular concept. So I'm sure somebody will come in with deep thoughts and energy and build that model. But so far, you are absolutely right. That is a kind.
Right. One last question from here, and then my last question from my side. So Ravi Rathi is asking, what is your take on bite-size insurance? Do you think India will see more bite-size insurance products in coming years?
Yeah, it depends on what is. See, my view is India doesn't have the basic insurance, right? The basic insurance. If I die, my family should get income support. If I fall sick, my family should get, and the cost should be taken care of. I think insurance sales for insurance sales' sake should not be done. So, depends on what you're offering in bite size, right? Yeah, it will happen. It will happen. Will the customers even know they want it? No. If I look at most of what is sold as bite-size insurance in the country, and I don't want to, please understand, I'm not for or against anyone, but most of what is sold as bite-size insurance in the country, look at the claims ratios. They are mostly sub 10%. Now, is that, so mostly it's a distribution game. It's not an insurance game anymore. If your claims ratio is that low, then a distributor will take all the money. And if that is the case, then you as an insurance company don't really matter, right? I am the distributor. I will take whatever I want to. So yeah, that's my view on it. I think serious insurance needs to come in, and we need to think customer and customer value proposition rather than just how will I sell insurance.
Thank you so much for all the inputs. Thank you so much for your time, Ashish. It was really good talking to you.
Welcome.
Thanks everyone for joining today.